reason why we can't still aim for that possibility. It can be done. You know, we've spoken to some of the friends in the business. We've got some things working in the background with some theatre people, movie people. You know, some things take time to create, and we knew, because that was a massive piece of work, you know, an hour and 45 minutes of recording music, to do it justice, you know, to give it the full production in whatever way we want to perform. It's going to take a lot of time, but we're confident that at some point we'll be able to display it in its entirety. You've got to do that. I mean, we gave a little bit of a taste with a couple of tracks on the last tour, just to show people we can play live. But you know, there's multiple opportunities, isn't there? Do we just play as a band? Do we bring an orchestra in? Do we bring a choir? Many ways of presenting it. So that's going to be another exciting project to look at.
So although this is your final tour, Judas Priest will carry on with the possibility with future recordings.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think you just, I mean, I look at bands like the Stones, or, you know, AC/DC just went out, and, you know, it's you can do whatever you want to do, but as we've said, it's just that level of credibility and that level of they look great, they sound great. That's really important. You know, you've got to maintain that element of strength and discipline, which we're determined to do for as long as we can. We feel by pulling back a little bit on these big world tours, it's probably going to sustain us a lot longer, and we're going to enjoy it as much, you know. So yeah, there's no end in sight.
Well, do you think you'll possibly have the urge to tour again? Because I know Judas Priest has been at it, touring non-stop, but say like a band like AC/DC go out on the road every 8 years or so, you think maybe...
Well, if we went in 8 years' time,
I win at hell.
Yeah, we got some Zimmer frames.
I actually got my first AARP thing in the post. I didn't even know that anyone was there. I can't wait to use that. I was in Denny's the other day, and I see that, you know, in a few months' time I can get my 10% discount. Denny's senior discount.
You talk about bands like AC/DC and the Stones still out there doing it. Do you have any sense that there are newer bands that we'll be talking about in 4 years' time?
Wow.
I mean, is it Metallica's? Is it the, you know, I mean, you know, we think about Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Sabbath, and these guys are still out there doing it. I mean, any contemporary sort of counterparts, do you think? Newer bands that might still be kicking around?
I don't know, it's a different world, isn't it? It really is a different world. I mean, you sometimes think about that at 4 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, you know, and there's tremendous talent in metal now, and you kind of wonder, will that particular band that's doing well be here 40 years later?
Yeah.
And I hope they are, I really do, because it's a wonderful life, you know. But it is a different world. I mean, everything's been turned on its head since the internet was invented. You know, it really has been very difficult for the industry, record industry, movie industry. There's not as much of a connection to really help bands grow and develop like there used to be for us. You know, when we were first with Columbia, CBS in the early days, which is now we're so happy to still be with the Sony family. You knew you didn't have to meet specific figures. You know, you knew the label would be behind you for 2 or 3 or 4 releases, give you tour support, give you all the things you needed to grow and develop. And it's a different case now. You know, you've got to meet your demographic on your first release, and if you don't, sorry guys, you've got somebody else in line behind you. And it's a shame, because that really, I think, is affecting the quality of music. You know, I mean, we look back at the wonderful people that surrounded us, singers, guitar players, drummers, you know, all these wonderfully, amazingly talented musicians from the 70s and, you know, the late 60s, and like we're starting to get hard and heavy. And so you because of the speed of life that we live in now, it's a shame that a lot of these bands just don't get the time to develop and become better than they already are, you know. But that's just the way it's turned out. You know, you've probably got to work harder now to be a young new band than ever before.
Speaking of having the ability to develop, specifically during the Hell Bent for Leather, Killing Machine era, there was a shift with you guys aesthetically that, pretty much up to this day, metal, bands have taken to. What was the shift and what brought that about?
I think around about that time Rob developed the leather look, and it was, with songs like Hell Bent for Leather, which is obviously motorbike orientated or car orientated or whatever. We shifted into that area, mainly through Rob really, but it wasn't contrived. We didn't sit down and say, hey, this is a cool look. It's something that we naturally evolved into and that felt really comfortable. And it's even now, as Judas Priest with 5 individual members with all different interests and whatever. But when we don the leather, we become an entity. We become that entity of Judas Priest. And since that point, it's always felt right. And so we naturally went that way. But it's still evolving now. I just tried to pick Rob's coat up. And I physically can't hold it up with one arm. So it's going to keep him quite fit jumping around on stage with that.
The great thing again is that, there is only one Judas Priest. We're unique with the kind of metal that we make. No other metal band has been able to cover the territory that we've been able to do, and I think that's something that we're very proud of. We love bands that have their sound and their direction, and they maintain that steady course, but we've never done that. We're a band that can be Painkiller 1 minute and then Turbo over the next, and Living After Midnight the next, and any number of hundreds of songs. And one thing that we always kept an awareness about was the way that the scene was changing around us. And if you don't do that, you're a fool. You've really got to look at everything that's happening in the music world from around your own area, because it can be tremendously inspiring, and you can get great ideas from listening to other talent. And so I'm sure that because we've grown through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on, that's been something that's been important in the life of Priest musically, in the creative sense, because we're just a very diverse band when it comes to the songs that we've covered. And we've always been very kind of stubborn in that we know what we want to do. This is what we want to be. We want to move in this direction, that direction. But in our mind, it's all metal. That's the most important aspect of what we try and achieve.
Can you talk about the audition process for Richie? Did you know he was the guy? Did you guys audition a bunch of different guitar players? Can you explain how that process went down?
We put the word out, and we got a lot of tapes and videos, and guys recommended, and we sifted through them. And we approached this one guy, Pete Friesen, who somebody had recommended to us, and he said, which is very honest of him, he said, I'm honoured sort of thing, but I don't think it's quite right for me. And we said, well, do you know a good guitar player? And he straight away mentioned Richie. We contacted Richie, but he never returned the calls because he thought it was a joke. So we were a bit put out by that, really. We thought he'd turned us down, and spoke to him, and he came up. And it's very difficult to say to someone, show us what you can do. So I said to Richie, show us what you can do. Because I couldn't think of anything else to say. And he just picked the guitar up. And I knew as soon as he started to play, not just how talented he is, but I could see there was something there that was right. It's very important for us in Judas Priest that we get along. It's no good just having a great guitar player if you don't get along with it. Don't quite fit in. But right from the word go, Richie blended in. I said earlier, and he blended into the band, and that combined with his talent, we knew right away we got our man. And as I said before, we wouldn't be here today, I'm sure, if we hadn't found Richie, because I don't think we would have found the right guitar player. So very lucky.
Did you know that Richie had played with Lauren Harris, and did you make that connection at all?
Yeah, we knew by the time he came up, yes. We'd done a bit of research, Yeah.
Do you have any songs that you haven't released that you'd like to release now?
Because I know, weren't you going to do turbo, wasn't that going to be twin turbos?
No, I don't think there really is much on the shelf that we haven't released now. There are a few. And of course we've written recently songs that have yet to be released, so we don't know whether they're going to see the light of day yet, but just how they turn out. But there's not much up there now, but that's left unreleased.
When you are done with Judas Priest, what are your plans individually?
Oh, sorry.
After finish with Judas Priest, what are your plans, each of you?
Probably die.
I'm going to start modeling agency.
I'm going to buy some white t-shirts.
Scott?
So I'm going to start a modeling agency.
Cool.
Now, keeping in mind with what Ian mentioned earlier about the Epitaph tour going to be covering the whole catalog, but and you mentioned the Nostradamus earlier, doing that in its entirety. Anything else that you guys may want to do down the line, like you do with British Steel, doing that front to back with a Painkiller or Street
Yeah, I mean, how much time have we got? You know, that's it. I mean, when we were going into rehearsals for British Steel, someone went, "Oh, by the way, it's Screaming for Vengeance, 25th anniversary next."
Yeah.
And there's another one, and there's another one. You know, it's tremendous, really. It was a real joy playing British Steel from front to back because we'd never done that before, and it was just an amazing experience. It was only, I think we only performed it in America, didn't we? Some Canadian guys. We didn't do it anywhere else in the world, which really pissed a lot of people off. So we have to try and make amends in that respect at some point. But yeah, I mean, you know, it really is the time constraints to do an anniversary of every one of these records that just keep popping in one after the other. And you look back at that 80s period, we were literally making an album a year. I mean, a record every single year, and touring. We'd come off a tour, we'd have a 2-week break, and then we'd have to go straight to the studio. You know. So that's how these multiple anniversaries keep popping up. It would be great to do something like that, but you know, old Father Time, you call them, the man with the scythe.
Rob, did you have any sense when you were doing the British Steel record about songs like Breaking the Law and Jumping in That? I mean, did you think that there was something special with those songs as they were being written?
You just feel you've got a great song, you feel you've got a good song, you have no idea what life it's going to take on. And it's, you know, beyond the moment, really. You can't consciously sit down and have a plan to make that kind of song. It just happens. And a lot of good memories, because as we talked about with the release, you know, we did it at John Lennon's former home, and it was just magical, wasn't it, Glenn? But the whole time is a very, very strong visual. I wish you'd have had cameras in every corner, because it would have been wonderful to have had it, you know.
We were actually sitting in the room, in the living room one day, and we were watching the MTV or a music video station. And John Lennon came on playing Imagine in the piano, you know, the white room, he played it with a grand piano, and we were actually in that room. And it just freaked us out totally. Not in a bad way, it just you know, we couldn't, here he was sitting there playing the piano, and there was a space there where he should have been. You know, it was pretty surreal. Pretty weird, surreal.